The VO meter, measuring your voiceover progress. Whether you're a veteran voice actor, just starting out, or don't even know how to set a level, we're here to help you avoid the pitfalls along your voiceover path to success. The VO meter is brought to you by Voice Actor Websites, Voice 123, Studio Bricks, Global Voice Acting Academy, JMC Demos, and Sennheiser. The VO meter is produced in part using Source Connect, made by source-elements.com. And now your hosts, Paul Stefano and Sean Daly.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 100 of the VO meter.
Measuring your voice-over progress.
So like I said, we are very excited to announce that this is our 100th episode. Paul, honestly, I never thought we would get to this point. What about you?
Yeah, each one seems like it's taking longer than the last. No.
Oh, no.
It's been a great ride. It is kind of unbelievable. It's been 100 episodes and almost 7 years now, which is just absurd.
know.
We crossed over 100,000 downloads over last spring. It's just unbelievable.
Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. You're the reason why we do it. I know it sounds very cliche, but just knowing that people benefit from what we're doing gives us the incentive to do it.
Yeah, I hear from people, not all the time, but fairly frequently, at least every couple of months, sending me a comment or talking about something they heard or saying how they liked it at a conference or event. So it's really cool to hear that feedback. I just got a comment last week from a fella named Derek Dysert, who's a friend of the show. I think he's commented before. He sent me a message saying, you know, some of your ads are being trampled over by the ads within your host. And I said, yeah, we've heard that before. I can fix it. I'm not sure I really want to. I'll look into it. And commented how I made the exact same comment to George and Dan about VOBS a couple of months ago because I first noticed it listening to their show. I don't often listen back to our show live on the hosting service because I edit it and produce it. But I did notice this exact same thing on Dan and George's show and pointed it out. And I thank Derek for pointing it out to us. And we'll see what we can do, Derek.
Sounds awesome. So, to celebrate our 100th episode, we are talking with the lovely and talented, very intelligent, very charming Nadia Marshall. And she is a very versatile voice actress who is also promoting her lead generation blueprint, because that's an area where a lot of us can struggle with, right? The marketing and finding potential clients to solicit our voiceover services too. So we'll be talking with her in just a few minutes.
And Nadia is also a professional singer, so we'll talk to her about the differences between the singing career versus VO and how there might be some cross-section between the two. But before that, it's time for...
VoiceOver Extra brings you the VO meter reference levels. Seriously, guys? That's the best you could come up with? Hey, it's your show.
So, Sean, what's been going on in your VO world?
Well, professional VO stuff, we'll start with that. So one thing that I wanted to point out is that Global Voice Acting Academy is actually doing a free donation-based webinar tomorrow, which is August 24th at time of recording, and it is for the state of AI and VO. So we're going to be partnering with NAVA, the National Association of Voice Actors, and it's going to be a little panel with David Toback, Tim Friedlander, Zeke Alton, and Bev Standing. These are all industry players who have had a lot of personal experience trying to learn more about AI and some of its the legal recourses that might be involved when trying to navigate some of these projects. So I highly recommend, if this is a topic that you are interested in or worried about, that you register for the event. You can find, if you're on our mailing list, you probably got an email about that. But make sure you register, because then that is how you will get access to the recording of the event. It is a free event, but we suggest a donation of $39. And all of those proceeds will be split between Global Voice Acting Academy and NAVA. So, highly recommend you do that. If you are a GVA member, you don't have to pay anything, because you'll get access to the recording as part of your membership. But again, whether you're a member or not, I highly recommend you attend this, because it's definitely on everyone's minds right now. And this way you can just be a little bit more informed about what the potential issues are and how, like I said, you might navigate them. So that's my obligatory GVA promotion, just trying to help out my cohorts there. But for me, I've just been auditioning like crazy. I did a few e-learning projects this week, and I wanted to do a shout out to one of my oldest clients, VJ, because I realized that much like the podcast, we've almost been working together for 7 years. I just wanted to say thank you for all of for all the recurring work. So that's the professional stuff. Personal stuff. My shoulder exploded in a pretty bad accident a couple weeks ago. So I know I sound chipper and happy now, but it was touch and go for a moment there. Anyways, backing up. 2 weeks ago, my in-laws came up with a new washer and dryer for us because our old one was just causing no end of problems. Like it would either clothes got caught in the agitator, or things would get balled up into a corner of the machine. It would just be bouncing all around the laundry room, and we were just sick of it. So the in-laws come up with the new units, and we're removing the old one, and we're pulling it out on a dolly, and there's like a little step to get out of the house onto the driveway. And unfortunately, when it cleared the step, a wheel on the dolly broke, and it just kind of toppled and turned on top of me, and it cut deep into my shoulder, and I was just in survival mode at the moment, so I was just trying to get this huge machine off me and onto the ground, and then I realized oh, my shoulder is very red and gory right now. We need to go to the ER. So 32 stitches later, and luckily, no muscle damage, no nerve damage, and I can still move my hands and my arms and all that stuff. And the stitches should be coming out in a couple of days. So I have a gnarly scar that looks like a question mark or a scorpion, but other than that, I'm okay.
Yeah, I saw a picture on Facebook, and it looked terrifying. It looked like Frankenstein's monster. It looked like your arm had been sewn on from spare parts.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's probably one of the worst looking injuries I've ever had. But believe it or not, it wasn't the most painful.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, you got to be careful with moving heavy machinery, especially when you're starting to get a little bit older. I mean, not that that same thing probably.
Sorry, I'm pushing 40. You can say that. It's okay.
It was a big ego. 20 years ago.
And honestly, I think it's a big wake-up call for her parents, too, because, they're very independent and they're constantly doing home projects like this. So it's just kind of a reminder for all of us to be a little bit more cautious going forward.
Yeah.
And always check your equipment.
I came to that realization when I was moving all my booth stuff together, because I was basically around the same age as you when I started doing voiceover, the age you are now. And I moved all the several iterations of my booth in and out of my house, up the flights of stairs by myself, until the last time when I got rid of my whisper room, and I realized I can't do this anymore because I was, 40?
No, I remember seeing you in New York that one time, years ago, just dead on your feet for moving those booths up and down those apartments.
Yeah.
It's good God.
So once I hit 45 or 46, I realized I needed some help. So to get my whisper room out of the house, I hired some local college kids, some strapping young lads that were 19 and 20, and they did it for me. And I just said, hey, put that here and move that over there, and that was much better.
I can tell you, because I hired some help to get rid of the washer unit, and I was just like, wow, that was a lot cheaper than the medical bills are. So
it's amazing how that works.
Learn from my experience. All right, but enough about my shoulder woes. What is going on in your VO world?
Well, to stick with the personal side of things, big week for me, because my wife and I are taking my daughter to her freshman year in college on Friday. So she's 18, out of the nest. When I started doing this, she was, 11 or 12. So it's kind of amazing that it's come that far. I can't believe we've gotten here. So that's going to be a big step. And then school starts for the other two on Monday. So big week personally, and probably a lot of tears on Friday, too.
Nice. Well, congratulations. That's huge.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. Unfortunately, she's studying to be an actor, even though, against Dad's best advice, she chose to
I was about to say, has she learned nothing from watching you?
I think what she might have learned is to get some actual training. So,
well, that's good, honestly.
Because she's been doing voiceover with no training at all for almost 8 years now, just like me, or maybe 7 years. So some actual theatrical training on stage would do her some good, or it will do anybody some good. And hopefully she'll start off on the right foot when she dips her toe in the professional side of things after college.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard us talk about this on the podcast before. It's like learning any new skill or like learning a language. It's going to be months to a couple years before you have any kind of proficiency. So the earlier you start, the better.
Yeah. So we've been getting ready for that. We've been talking about if she wants to bring any equipment with her to try and do voiceover. So she's going to a specialty acting conservatory, and they do have all the facilities she could possibly need for doing voiceover. So I think we're just going to go with, if you get a job, just go to one of the studios at school and pull it off there, and not worry about bringing a USB mic or any sort of soundproofing stuff like we do when we go traveling, for ourselves. So hopefully she'll be okay with that.
That's great. You can use the university studio. That's handy.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see if that happens. So that's on the personal side. On the professional side, I've been doing a lot of e-learning stuff as well. And something you touched on about one of your longest clients made me think about this job I just did. So I had a Source Connect session just an hour ago, or an hour and a half ago, with a client who's given me a job, pretty much a job per month over the last year. And it's a studio that I first contacted in, 2018, I want to say. They're actually the reason I got Source Connect, because as we used to tell people, or you'll still hear advice from people saying, you don't really need to sign up for something like Source Connect or IPDTL until you need it. So basically when a client asks you to have it. But way back in 2017 or 18, I contacted the studio and they said, we'd love to work with you, but one of the requirements is you have to have Source Connect, because when we have a session, we want to know you're ready, and we can just hire you that day or the next day. And that's exactly what happened, except it took almost 4 years for me to actually get a job from them. And it just goes to show that the preparation and the marketing and follow-up you do with people really matters, because now, 6 years later, I'm getting a job from them almost every month, and it's been great. But you have to do that prep work ahead of time and be sure you're ready to do the work when needed.
Absolutely. Great success story.
And then I'm also doing some live announcing. So as many of you know, I've been doing a lot of college sports announcing, and that has just started. So I did my first volleyball match for the University of Maryland last Saturday. I'll be doing another one on Labor Day, as well as working for the Naval Academy for their volleyball team. And there'll be no end in sight to the college sports and me vomiting all over social media about it over the next 8 to 9 months. So look out for that.
Again?
And then I've produced
I thought we were done with the summer season.
Summer, there really isn't summer season except for that one lacrosse league I did. So all the colleges are off for the most part. So that's what's ramping up now. And then on the audiobook front, I just had a book come out that I narrated myself for the first time in a while. It's called Deceived by Jean Porro. That's JeanPorro. You can find that on Audible or wherever fine audiobooks are sold. It's a murder mystery that takes place in New England, ironically. So listen to that if you like. And then I've produced several audiobooks for Twin Flame Studios. One that just came out, and that book is called The Carry On Imperative, a memoir of travel, reinvention, and giving back by Robin Pascoe. And this is a really cool book because Robin was a bit of a celebrity author in Canada, well, really across the world, internationally. And it's all about how she took her career and reinvented herself as an expat while traveling around the world with her husband as a diplomat. So really cool book, The Carry On Imperative by Robin Pascoe. So that's it for VO meter reference levels. We'll get to our interview with Nadia Marshall after...
Questionable gear purchase.
So, believe it or not, no new questionable gear purchases this month. I've been trying to be real good about that. But one thing I've been curious about is, and I used to be a very large proponent of this as well, but how often are people using an iPad or a tablet in their booth these days? I'm really curious, because I used to do it all the time before, or mainly as a script reader, before I got a second monitor in my booth. And now I'm finding that, like, for the last several months, it just doesn't spend any time in the booth with me, the iPad. So now I'm actually kind of consciously forcing myself to find new ways to use this. Like some things that I've done, I've hooked up. If you plug it in directly to your computer, you can use it as an additional camera for if you're doing a directed sessions. I've been doing that for me and Rachel when she's doing her VO training for GVAA. And then other than that, I've actually been Today I was experimenting going back to using it as a script and then just having my DAW on my main, on my dual monitor. And that one was actually really nice. I find that I'm like, for someone who's a little, has struggles with attention sometimes, it was kind of nice to have the script on like a single surface or like a unitasker, so I'm not like looking at other tabs or going to social media or losing concentration in other ways. So that was nice. I feel like, and just the way that the monitors are positioned in my booth right now, I feel like I stand up a little bit taller and I gesticulate a little bit broader when I look off the tablet. So I might keep doing that going forward.
It's interesting you say that. I've been thinking about the same thing. I do right now use an iPad exclusively for script reading. So I have a monitor that is actually too low to really see because of the way my booth is set up. I use this portable computer cart. So the monitor is below my chest. So I really only glance down to make sure the DAW is running. That's really all I use it for. And then I read all the scripts off of an iPad that sits on a articulating arm that I drilled into the top of this cart. And that's all I used it for. But I've been thinking about reconfiguring as well because I got some requests for dubbing that I couldn't really pull off in here the way I have things set up. I need a monitor at eye level or maybe even two. And the reason I didn't is because I was hesitant to drill anything into the studio bricks. I still am to an extent, but I did almost a year ago now, I drilled a mic mount into the roof of the studio bricks. I reached out to, I think it was Miguel, and asked them if that would do any damage. And they said, no, just use screws that are a certain length. And I forgot what they said, but I can go back and find that email. So I put the mic mount into the roof and nothing's happened. So I think I'm okay after almost a year. So I was thinking about doing the same thing.
Do you think you could use, or have you tried any like super strong adhesives you think it might work?
For a monitor?
Or for the mount, and then you could put the monitor on the mount.
I don't think that's a good idea. I think it would probably fall down eventually.
Probably not. You might just get a terrible tear out of your wall.
Yeah, that's the one thing I want to avoid. So I'm thinking just about putting just another Visa mount mounted into the ceiling of the studio bricks, right where I have the microphone mount, and all should be well. And then I would have a monitor at eye level that I could actually use because of same thing you were saying, that I don't think I need the iPad if I have a monitor that's big enough right in front of my face. But yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. I wonder how people are dealing with that.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's like there are benefits to both, right? Like there are so many benefits to having a dual monitor set up in your booth because it doubles your efficiency, and it really helps. Like depending on your process, there's nothing wrong with like having an external computer and then starting that and then walking in the booth, doing all your stuff, and then walking out and editing. That can really help compartmentalize your process. So you're really focused on just performing and then just editing.
That's what I do now.
Like I said, it can be, like it can be really helpful just to speed up your time to be able to edit in the booth, right? If like something's really has a tight deadline, for example. But again, so now as you guys can see, like I'm trying to reintegrate this thing, and if I can't justify the purchase, then maybe I'll sell it or put it towards some other upgrades. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments or send us some audio. How are you using a tablet, or are you using a tablet in your VO booth setups?
Yeah, I know what you mean. For me, it feels like a waste right now because literally all I use it for is a script reader, and you could use anything really for that. So.
And you just have the base iPad. I have an iPad Pro, so I feel like I really overbought.
Yeah. I do have the keyboard, though. And sometimes it comes in handy to do stuff on the road. I did use it for the lacrosse season. I would bring it with me and then type in the lineups into the iPad on the keyboard, the touch keyboard, and that was helpful. So that was the one other time I used it other than just as a paperweight script reader.
Let's see. So that's pretty much my questionable gear purchases, or trying to make them unquestionable, I guess, sensible. What about you?
Well, I have a not questionable gear purchase, not a purchase. A manufacturer has sent me another piece of review equipment, and this is from Arturia. It's the Mini Fuse 4 audio interface. So I am using it right now to record the podcast, as we often do when we have new pieces of gear. So you can tell me what you think the sound is like. Let me give you some quick rundown of the features. It's a portable bus-powered 4-in, 4-out USB-C audio interface. Has 2 mic/instrument line combo preamps with phantom power, 2 line instrument inputs, 2 headphone outputs with independent volume controls, 2 USB hub connections, traditional 5-pin MIDI or DIN I/O for synths, drum machines, and MIDI-enabled processors. A supplementary USB-A hub, which reduces clutter, supporting any USB-A device up to 250 milliamps per port. One stereo virtual loopback channel for capturing computer audio, which is what I'm doing right now. Supports 44.1, 48, and 88.2, or all the way up to 192 kilohertz sample rate, and is fully USB 2 compatible. It also comes with a bunch of software, which was pretty cool. It comes with Ableton Live, comes with Analog Lab Intro, the Arturia FX software suite, which has some preamps, a plate reverb, tape echo, and chorus effects. Has Auto-Tune with a 3-month subscription, Guitar Rig for emulations and guitar effects, and a 3 months free to Splice subscription, which is samples and loops if you're doing any DJ work. So it's got a lot of really cool features. It does sound great. I've noticed almost no self-noise whatsoever. And the input in I/O is pretty cool. Like I said, I'm capturing the podcast right now. A couple of gripes with it. First of all, like most interfaces in this price range, first of all, it's $219 retail. I'm looking at Sweetwater's site right now, $219 US. So the preamps are tied to one phantom power switch. So it's not an issue for most microphones, but I learned old school to never have phantom power on a mic that doesn't need it, like if you're using a dynamic or especially a ribbon mic. So what I like to do is plug a condenser into one input, and a dynamic into the other input. And in order to have phantom power on, it's going to put it through both channels, 1 and 2, every time. That concerns me. I'm not using a terribly fragile mic on the second input, but I still don't like having that phantom power going through it if I don't need to. Secondly, the USB hub only works if you use the power supply plugged into a traditional outlet. So Arturia does actually give you a power adapter with it, which is cool. But in order to use that USB function as a hub, you have to have it powered up. And then the killer feature for me, or killer feature that's not there, is there doesn't seem to be a way to play back down the line from a DAW or really any effect on the computer over things like Source Connect or IPDTL or even Zoom or Skype. So that's the killer feature that I think most interfaces are missing, and it's because it's such a niche for most people. But I cannot figure out a way to do that. I reached out to their support at Arturia, and they couldn't either. They do give you quite a robust mixer that comes with the unit. It's called Minifuse Control Center. It does allow you to control pretty much everything from the software, which is a cool feature. So you can create custom mixes, you can create a Q mix and separate headphone mixes, as well as change the inputs virtually as well. So that is cool. But unless I'm missing it, and if Arturia, you're listening, you can give me some input on this. Unless I'm missing it, there doesn't seem to be a way to play back down the line over a conferencing software. And I know that's a limitation of a lot of mixers and interfaces. It's primarily the way most of these conferencing softwares work. They only listen to channels 1 and 2, and some only even listen to channel 1. Now, I think we mentioned in one of the episodes that Zoom is looking at separating that out, and I don't think it's available yet. There might be a beta out there where you can tell Zoom which channel to listen back to or back from. But for the time being, all these conferencing websites and pieces of software that only listen to 1 and 2, that's a limit of every mixer I've come across, except for the Yamaha AGO6 and AGO3 that can play back down the line from a DAW.
Yeah, and at that price range, I just don't think I don't know of anything else. I feel like you have to go at least $500, maybe even $700 before you see that regularly.
Yeah, and we've reviewed some of those recently, like the RME Babyface. That can do that. The issue with those is that then it becomes much more than you need for most voice actors or even podcasters. Like, I don't need everything as in Total Mix for RME's software package. In fact, it's quite overwhelming for me. So it can be done, like you said, with a much more expensive mixer. I think the Apogee Quartet can do it as well. But those are mixers that are way more than I need. I like having the 2 channels, and still looking for that Goldilocks interface. Maybe it is the Passport VO that George Whittam is developing with Centrance. If that's the case, that would be that killer feature that that I need, and I'm sure a lot of creators are looking for, in a simple-to-use interface that's within the $300 range that can also stream.
So let's go back to the mini fuse, because I mean, for the price, it's still pretty competitive, and it looks like it's well built. I love that it has 2 headphone outs, like that can be extremely useful, even for whether you have 2 people in the studio and you're playing off of each other, or simply having a headphone at the desk and then one in the booth, like we were just talking about.
That's what I use it for right now. Yeah, I use it exactly that way. I have one at the desk, one that runs down the hall of the room into the booth.
And I love that it has individual headphone outs, too. That's great. I mean, a dial gain for it, too. So back to the unit. Who would you recommend this for?
Well, I'd recommend it for anyone who's starting out that only needs 1 or 2 inputs for voiceover. And in fact, they have two other units, the Minifuse 1 and Minifuse 2, that would work just as well. I do like the build. The knobs have great feel to them. It's a great constructed unit. It's very portable. So the 4, does it have the actual size here? Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can get the measurements. It's not big at all. So it's like
it looks very like it would just slip in like a laptop sleeve or something like that.
Yeah, I can't get the measurements on it, but I would say 7 inches long and like 3.5 to 4 wide. So very portable. About the size of a small notebook.
So like the size of a paperback book almost?
Yeah, a paperback book is a good description. So much smaller than the AGO 6 I have sitting on the desk right next to it. It would be really easy to slip into a laptop bag, or I could probably even fit it into like a blazer inside pocket, or a suit coat pocket. Yeah, almost like a really large portfolio. A little bit thicker than that, but it's very portable. So I'd recommend it to any voice actors who are looking at the Scarlett. The Scarlett 2i2 or the 2i4, maybe even the 6i6. It's a little smaller than the 6i6. Anyone who's looking at any of the Steinberg entry-level interfaces like the UR12 or UR22, the Evo 4 from Audient, it's about the same size as those, and sounds great. It's easy to use. I do really like the software, the Mix Control. Mix Control is a different company. The Minifuse Control Center, that allows you to control everything you can do on the knobs inside the software. Because for me, like you were saying, I am one of those people that has all my editing and production outside the booth. So if I didn't have it that way, I have to run outside to change gain and change monitor levels on the headphones. Presently, when I use the AGO 6, this I can do all inside the booth, and that is quite helpful.
Awesome. And just looking at some of their other offerings, too, if the 4 is a little bit more than you need, they have a 1 and a 2 as well for $99 and $159. So I'm sure you can find something that meets your specific needs and your budget.
Yeah, and I believe they all have that loopback feature. So if you have that need to capture something incoming, like maybe you're doing a podcast and you don't necessarily need to play it back live, it would be perfect for that, even at that $99 price point.
Yeah, lastly, just to emphasize, these are some more advanced features that we benefit from based on the clients that we work with and what they ask for. But if you're just starting out, or even if you're at that intermediate or advanced level, this might be all that you need. I know plenty of people who use a $100 to $200 interface as their primary interface and have never upgraded from it.
Yeah. So thanks to Arturia for sending this to me. I will say, I hadn't necessarily heard of them before I stumbled onto it by looking at a Guitar Center ad. I think I got it in my email, and I said, "Ooh, that looks interesting." So I contacted them, and they sent it to me, and I've been really impressed with the sound quality and ease of use. So thanks, Arturia, for sending the Minifuse 4.
Thanks, Arturia. So that wraps up our questionable gear purchases. We'll get to our interview with Nadia Marshall in just a minute after a message from our sponsors. Hey, Paul, did you know Voice123, the largest online marketplace for voice actors, just celebrated its 20th year anniversary?
Whoa, really? That's amazing. Doesn't really surprise me, though. I've used Voice123 since the beginning of my career. I remember way back in my first year where I booked a job as a hypnotist. I actually got to say, "You are getting very sleepy," on a radio ad. The whole thing was super easy. They even paid me right away for the audition and said that was all they needed.
I've been a member of Voice123 for years as well. I've always enjoyed their upfront policies, ability to contact clients directly, and their commitment to the voiceover industry.
Totally. CEO Rolf Veldman has appeared on the show before, and in every interaction I've had with him and the company, I felt a sense of trust, like they really care.
Well, if you want a great place to find your VO niche and find yourself as a voice actor, visit voice123.com for more information.
Now, VO Meter listeners can also get 15% off premium tier memberships. For more information, visit our website and click on the Click Here to Save 15% banner on our sponsors page.
Voice123, speak for yourself. Studio Bricks designs and creates the highest performing portable sound isolation booths. Their professionally perfected acoustics enhances your performance and takes your recording to their maximum quality from your home studio. Forget about managing noise conflicts with your neighbors and family. Pursue your passion for voiceover on your own time and on your own terms.
How many times has this happened to you? You're listening to the radio when this commercial comes on, not unlike this one, and this guy starts talking, not unlike myself.
Or maybe it's a woman that starts talking, not unlike myself, and you think to yourself, geez, I could do that.
Well, mister, well, missy, you just got one step closer to realizing your dream as a voiceover artist, because now there's Global Voice Acting Academy. All the tools and straight from the hip, honest information you need to get on a fast track to doing this commercial yourself.
Well, not this one exactly.
Classes, private coaching, webinars, home studio setup, marketing and branding help, members-only benefits like workouts, rate and negotiation advice, practice scripts, and more. All without the kind of hype you're listening to right now. Go ahead, take our jobs from us. We dare you.
Speak for yourself, buddy. I like what I do.
And you will too when you're learning your craft at Global Voice Acting Academy. Find us at globalvoiceacademy.com.
Because you like to have fun.
In these modern times, every business needs a website. When you need a website for your voice acting business, there's only one place to go. Like the name says, voiceactorwebsites.com. Their experience in this niche webmaster market gives them the ability to quickly and easily get you from concept to live online in a much shorter time. When you contact voiceactorwebsites.com, their team of experts and designers really get to know you and what your needs are. They work with you to highlight what you do. Then they create an easily navigable website for your potential clients to get the big picture of who you are and how your voice is the one for them. Plus, VoiceActorWebsites.com has other great resources, like their practice script library and other resources to help your voiceover career flourish. Don't try it yourself. Go with the pros. VoiceActorWebsites.com, where your VO website shouldn't be a pain in the you-know-what.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the interview portion of this episode. Our guest today is Nadia Marshall. Nadia is a voice actor and soprano singer and has been using her voice professionally for over 12 years. She has both a bachelor's and master's degree in vocal performance from Florida State University and The Ohio State University, and has 2 minors in French and Italian language. Some of her clients include BMW, Lexus, Microsoft, Pandora, and Square. In addition to her voiceover business, she has developed a course called Lead Generation Blueprint. This course is designed for voice actors to help them gain confidence, efficiency, and ease with lead generation and find their dream clients. So, please put your hands and voices together in welcoming Nadia Marshall. How you doing, Nadia?
I'm doing well. Thank you both.
Thanks so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. So as Sean mentioned, you are both a singer and a voiceover artist. Can you tell us how you got started in both?
Sure. So with singing, I mean, you know, as a little kid, you sing all the time. But I think I was a choir kid, definitely in high school. But there was a moment for me that really solidified that I wanted to sing as part of a career. We had a choir trip to Austria, of all places, and we had a little 10-day tour, and we went to different cities. And one of the cities we went to was Salzburg, and there's this beautiful cathedral over there. It's where Mozart was baptized, actually. And I don't know how we managed to get this, but we were able to sing in the space. So we sang in the space, and there was one piece where we had a little bit of a solo trio on the choir. And so I remember I was singing something, probably I shouldn't have been singing it because it was way too high. But at the time I thought I was so cool, but and I remember singing it and seeing just the carvings and the dome, and there was like this incredible reverb with the acoustics. It was like a 2.5-second delay, 3-second delay. It's crazy. And yeah, that was like the moment I knew I wanted to sing for the rest of my life. So that's kind of my origin story for that. In terms of voiceover, I met someone who was a Brazilian voiceover artist in an opera chorus, of all places. We had kept in contact. After I finished my degree at Florida State University, we were still in contact, and she reached out to me and she's like, you should really consider voiceover as a career. I'm like, okay. And, she really represented, I think, this incredible community of people with her generosity with time. And she gave me some of her old equipment and she showed me how to get started. So it's really all due to Sumaira and her generosity that got me started in voiceover. So
That's awesome. Great stories. I've actually been to that cathedral in Salt Lake.
Yes?
So that is so cool. Like,
Nice.
man, for once, I have a Kevin Bacon moment. So I've heard this from various voice talent who are also singers, but I'd love to hear from you. How do you think your singing experience helps with your VO performances?
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree that it is something that is so informative. I think both inform the other, but I think especially for voiceover, I feel very confident with my breath control. I feel really confident with my vocal stamina. I feel very confident with my vocal health for a health standpoint. So if I'm doing these really long sessions, like it's a long form narration, or if I have to do, say, animation or video games, I'm able to kind of manipulate my voice in such a way that is safe, and I'm able to do it for long periods of time. I think also just like, not just necessarily just singing, but I think musicianship as well is really, really helpful to kind of know that music and know that rhythm. I think it can be really, really helpful if you're reading any form of narration, be it audio books or let's say e-learning, but sort of knowing when to highlight things, when to kind of let things sort of move along or to kind of give more weight to something. I think that has also informed it. So yeah, I'd say it's been a really vital skill in order to make me feel very confident in my ability to produce, what the client wants.
I would totally agree. I've always thought that about musicianship as well. I'm a musician. I don't. I mean, I sing a little bit poorly. Anybody heard me at New Atlanta doing some karaoke? But I played wind instruments my whole life, like since I was 5 years old, because my dad was a professional musician. And I remember when I first started training with Sean Pratt, the first thing he said to me was, "You're a musician, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah. How do you know?" And he said he could tell I was reading ahead. He said that people who are musicians and singers who know how to read music, they're always looking ahead, even subconsciously, because they want to see where the breaks are in the music. They know when they have a break for another instrument, and they have some measures of rest. And he says that everyone he's worked with that's a musician does that instinctively. And it's actually kind of a problem because you sometimes get too far ahead. Like your mind doesn't catch up because you're reading something and you're not actually performing it because your mind is looking ahead 3 or 4 lines.
You're no longer in the present, you're in the future.
Yeah. So it's something I had to train myself out of a bit, actually. So
Time
it's a
traveler.
bit of a detriment. Yeah. But I think in general, I think you're right. The musicality certainly helps with knowing the flow and the way a VO script should go.
Yeah, I love how you touched on sort of both the mechanical benefits, like the stamina and the confidence, as well as the expressive ones, like the timing and the emphasis and the flow of your phrases, for example.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of need both, right? Because we are creatives, but at the end of the day, this is our livelihood and this is our job. So vocal health is so incredibly important. I'm very, very thankful with my studies, even in a little bit of pedagogy, and I have like a singing health specialization certificate, that I know the dangers of what can happen when you aren't careful with your voice. And I'm glad more people are talking about that, even at different conferences and things, because, this is our livelihood and we have to take care of it. So knowing kind of the mechanics behind it and how to be safe and how to speak on the breath all the time, or if the client is asking me to do, say, a job in like a slightly more vocal fry-esque position, I can do it safely for a short period of time to give them what they want, but then not like lose my voice for the rest of the day. So yeah, it's definitely been very helpful.
Yeah, so
Brilliant.
important. So we mentioned how you got started both in singing and voiceover. What were the biggest challenges you had making the jump from singing to voiceover?
So I feel like in terms of a challenge, you don't know what you don't know. So I think obviously at the beginning, for most people who are just getting started in the voiceover industry, I think it was just like, well, all right, how do I do this? I think I felt confident with the acting side of things. I felt confident with the vocal production side of things, but it was like, well, how do I get the work? I think that's ultimately the hardest thing at the start. I think hardest thing for most people, but I actually felt another added benefit, I think, to being a singer too, was the amount of rejection you get every day. That, obviously being an opera singer, it's a normal Tuesday. So we call rejection letters, especially if we get them from, say, opera companies or things, we call them PFOs, or please F offs. So I'm used to getting lots of PFOs.
I like that.
So I was pretty used to the rejection. So I was like, I'm not deterred by that. This is a marathon, not a sprint. But I think it was mostly just, all right, well, where do I find the work? That was probably the biggest challenge, not the easiest challenge, the biggest challenge.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I love that you talked about it, because this job is definitely not for the faint of heart or the rejection sensitive, for sure. As I like to joke, as someone who's rejected daily, I've got a bit of a thick skin at this point. So
right.
It's just,
right.
It's just part and parcel for the course. So that was the biggest challenge getting started. What about right now?
I'd say right now it's a little bit of... So I'm really trying to break into the documentary sector. And I feel like sometimes it's who you know, or sometimes it's like being very perfectly placed at just the right time to get someone's attention. Or it has to be a union, job that, obviously with certain current events that are happening in the world, that's a little bit difficult to try and navigate. But I think sometimes it's just being at the right place at the right time, and you put in the reps, but you can't always tell when that is. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is just trying to break into the documentary sector.
Yeah, I've heard that one is notoriously difficult to find any kind of avenue in.
Right.
So good on you.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that describes the whole industry, though, really. I would say at least 3/4 of my jobs just happen to be that's what they were looking for at that particular time, or I happen to have a referral from somebody. And I feel like that's kind of part and parcel for the industry as a whole. But again, I totally get what you're saying. So speaking of genres, what are your primary genres that you do currently work in? What do you do mostly?
So most of the time I'm working on lots of like non-broadcast narration, specifically explainer or e-learning, and then of course like more broadcasts like commercial. And then surprisingly this year the majority of my work has been video games, which is something I've been wanting to do a lot more of. So I'm very, very thankful for that. And actually medical narration has picked up a little bit, which was another genre I really wanted to start getting into. So manifestation works, guys. Just saying.
Well, hopefully manifesting on this podcast will help you break into your dream genres.
Next month, Nadia is in National Geographic, The Rising Star. But anyway, that's great advice. Absolutely great advice. You mentioned in your bio that you're actually trilingual. Do you do voiceover in French and Italian as well? And how has your polyglotness been a benefit to your career?
So I have done some work in French and Italian language, yes, but I try to be very strategic as to when to put it. I'd say more so I do a lot more accent work than I do. I have done some with French and Italian language, but they have to be very small scripts, because if it's anything that's like several pages long, like a long form narration, I will recommend a different voice actor who I know like grew up with that language. I would feel more comfortable giving it to them. But I'd say having the love of language and studying language has been very advantageous for audio guides specifically, which I really enjoy doing, because you feel like you're on vacation and you don't even have to leave your house because you're narrating the museum or you're on the walking tour. So that's been very helpful. But actually, I'd say my accents have been the most advantageous. So I'm of American and British citizenship, and I'm of British and Indian heritage. So I do American, British, and Indian accents for work all the time. And I'd say that is the most advantageous for getting me, whether it's character work or it is work with international clients who want kind of this global sound. That's probably the most helpful thing in my toolbox for sure.
Brilliant. No, I'm telling people all the time the easiest way to understand the accent is to understand the language itself, because then you're familiar with what you call the vocal tract posture, or how you have to position your mouth to make these sounds.
And if I have to do a voiceover, say like Italian accented English or French accented English, I feel more comfortable doing that because I understand the language pretty well. And people who are from there, say to me, yeah, you sound like you're from this region, or you sound like you're from here. Obviously, I've done the work and I've checked in with accent coaches and things to just make sure, but I feel more comfortable doing English with that rather than like very heavy jargon or very specific words and things that are maybe like, if we're talking about, say, battery replacement in Italian, I'm not going to know that lingo. So I would feel more comfortable giving that to a native person who probably knows a little more than I would in that regard.
Makes sense. So shifting gears a bit, we talked about in your bio. Thank you for saying that, by the way. We'd be lost without it seems. You mentioned another, I guess it's not really, I guess it's a vertical market. I was going to say a horizontal market, but the lead generation blueprint that you've started. Tell us about that and how that came about.
Sure. So this is a course that I have developed. This one is purely for voice actors, but I'll have one that's more for all kinds of freelancers soon. But I noticed whenever I would listen to different podcasts, or I would see different conferences or different speakers present like masterclasses or workshops, the topic of lead generation would always come up. And I felt like no one was talking about it yet, or no one was really providing a resource to talk about it. Like people would mention, oh yeah, you have to have lead generation. Or they'd say, yeah, hire a lead generator. But then you're like, well, what if I'm still at the beginning sides of things where I don't have a lead generator, but I have to find leads on my own? How can I make that faster? How can I make that more efficient? How can I find even more leads rather than just the same old Google search I've been doing for the past, couple of months? So I've noticed that there was clearly a need there. And at the time I was with my accountability group, my mastermind group. And as I kept talking about it and how it was bugging me, every single person was like, hello, there's your answer. Like, you should just make a course. I'm like, are you sure? They're like, this is the time. This is the time. So I was in the process of creating a course, and I mentioned it to JMC. And JMC and Anna were very kind enough to say, if you'd want to apply to be a speaker at VO Atlanta because they had the speaker submissions thing for Atlanta for 2023. I didn't get a spot, but they said, if you'd like, you can get a spot for One Voice. And I said, sign me up. Like, I'll do it. I'll do it. So I'm scheduled to speak at One Voice about it too. But I feel like it's such a resource that everyone needs right now, because it's just going to keep your business growing. We have casting sites and we have agents, but ultimately you can still find work and have a pretty good career finding your own clients yourself. So, there is a need and there is a market for it. And if I can make it tailored to voice actors, specifically giving them access to unconventional methods rather than just the same old search engine method, it can, I want everyone to get plenty of work, because there's plenty of work out there. So
can you give us a sneak peek? I don't want you to give away all the secrets, either from your presentation or from the business itself, but what are some of the highlights?
Sure. So there are 6 modules in total, and it is a video presentation. So I kind of give you some breakdowns of, let's say we're focusing on just search engines. So I break down Boolean searching, but then I go into the really advanced techniques of Boolean searching, probably tools and methods that most people don't think about unless they've done extensive amounts of research. And then I move on to LinkedIn, and I focus just on LinkedIn, and I show you all the different ways you can use the search filter, and whether it's LinkedIn groups and pages and things like that. I go into each social media platform. I feel like the big 6, for lack of a better term, to really hone in on each one and show you examples on each one of how to find leads. And then some unconventional methods like IMDb or searching via other conferences or awards. So I go into great detail for all of those and some tools I recommend as well.
Fantastic. I was like, where is this course? Must have. So switching gears to gear, we'd love to hear about what kind of home studio setup you have.
First of all, great segue. So my studio is, I have a vocal booth to go studio. So I have one of the kind of tent structures. Every time I'm on a video call with a client, they say it looks like I'm in a spaceship. So I call it my little spaceship. And I have a monitor in my booth. My laptop is outside of the booth. I have a Sennheiser 416. I have a U87 Tribute and a Rode NTG5. I am using a Focusrite Scarlett. I use Adobe Audition. And of course, you have to be equipped with IPTTL. I almost said IMDb, IPTTL and Source Connect standards. So that's my studio.
Is the vocal booth to go one of the soundproofer ones, or just the standard blankets?
Yes, the blankets. Mm-hmm.
Okay, wow,
and
sounds great.
I did splurge on a very nice ergonomic chair for my back, because for a couple of years I was literally just sitting on the floor for like 2-hour sessions. I'm like,
no.
you can't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's
Well,
awesome.
studio
What chair
sounds
are you using?
fantastic.
So I was curious about the chair because I'm in the market for one.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. I have a Herman Miller chair. I can send you the
man.
information. It's a nice one. I waited for a sale because they are a bit expensive, but it was well worth the purchase.
Yeah. For those who don't know, let's see, the Herman Miller, usually the Aeron is like their most affordable one, and that one's still like $700 to $800 new. So I highly recommend going like refurbished or secondhand or getting a deal like Nadia did. But what Paul was saying, and I totally agree, your studio sounds fantastic, and I love that not everything's like the most expensive things you can use, like say the Scarlett, or just having more of a like the acoustical booth versus say like a Studio Bricks, but it sounds amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think there's this sort of fear, I think, that we have to have everything in alignment, or everything has to be in place before we can like start recording. That I started with this kind of setup. I mean, obviously I've improved it over the years, but I'm waiting until it's time to get a Studio Bricks. But I'm like, I'm making good money now with this setup, and I don't have to. The money I would be using, quote unquote, for a Studio Bricks, I'm going to instead use it towards investing in other things. Like if it's a new demo, or if it's a new, maybe a conference ticket or whatever it is that I feel like it's worth it. You can still have pretty good sound if you have like an audio engineer you trust, and work with them and utilize your space to the best of its ability.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, says the guy who's bought like 700 microphones.
And is constantly fiddling with his studio.
But I haven't switched out anything in over a year, I'll have you know, and the audience. But it definitely makes sense to stick with what works, because even if you buy something, it's going to take work. Studio Bricks, the one I have, is one of the original Studio Brick ones. And I had to do a ton of work to get it to sound right acoustically. I don't think they would argue that was a necessity. That's why they've actually changed the foam inside that ships with the new models that I understand is quite improved. But anything you put in your space is going to have to be tweaked a little bit. And it'll take you a while to get to where you were, probably doing fine booking work.
Right, exactly. And I mean, there's so many people who have courses or who have different resources, or you can contact that's literally what they do for a living, is they help optimize your space. That the amount of money you would spend maybe on a Studio Bricks, you could spend even like a quarter of that just to optimize your space with that person, and getting the mics or whatever it is to really get started and make money and get your business on the ground.
Exactly. So. And it's really about not letting temptation and desperation and FOMO impact your purchasing decisions.
That's it. It's FOMO. It really is.
Yeah, and by the way, thank you for the segue. One of those services you can take advantage of is georgethe.tech, where Paul is also a team member. So just go to georgethe.tech and book a session with one of our engineers, possibly me, and we can help you set up your space.
Yeah, honestly, that is one of the best investments that you can make in your home studio, because no individual piece of gear is going to make your career.
Yep.
So unfortunately, I don't have as good a segue for the next section, but I'm curious, what do you see as the future of VO? Like, do you think AI will take over some or even all of the work?
This is definitely a hot topic. I mean, I think I'm not as an expert, or I'm not as in the know with every single thing that's going on like some of our industry leaders, but from someone who has studied the history of the voice, of the human voice. The human voice has been studied for eons, and it's something that we still are figuring out even more about. That I think AI is obviously it's impressive, and technology is impressive, but it cannot replicate the human voice. And there are so many nuances and so many personality things that AI still hasn't quite figured out yet. And I think we'll be fine for a good period of time. I would agree with some statements that have been said that I think AI will take over the not so great budget work, like the work that might be the cheapest out of all of the options available, or the ones that maybe are near impossible for a human to complete. If like there are these examples where, oh, we want you to read the entire version of the Washington Post by tomorrow morning, and you have a less than 8-hour time window, and you would be sleeping, an AI voice can achieve that compared to a human voice. So I think it will take some of the smaller work that for someone who obviously is serious about voiceover and is making this their career, I don't think they have anything to fear. I think for those people who are hobbyists, or for those people who are like, oh yeah, I can make a quick buck on the side, it will be more competitive for them because it is more cost effective from the voice buyer sense to be like, well, why do I have to pay somebody when I can literally have this thing make it for me? Mm-hmm. I think obviously with the strike and everything that's happening right now, human creativity is something that cannot be replaced and is so unique to this world that I really don't think the higher quality voiceover work will still be available, because we are high quality and we know our worth, and we have put the time and the energy that unfortunately AI just doesn't have the life experience that human beings have. So the smaller work will be gone, but I think if you're in this for the long haul, you'll be fine.
I mean, honestly, that could be a good thing. A lot of the high demand, low paying jobs that most people probably don't want to do anyways, I wouldn't mind saying goodbye to those.
Right.
But I love your perspective. I love the positivity and just the unique idea that we don't even understand the voice well enough to replicate it at this point, at least not in a compelling, creative way.
Yeah, because every human being, every facial structure, every language studied, every accent heard indicates and further makes the voice the voice. Even if you put two people that are identical twins in the same, space to grow up in, they may go off and have, even if it's one differing thing, they could probably sound different, and they probably will sound different. So you cannot fully replicate a human voice through a machine yet. I mean, I think we're still quite a bit away from that happening. So I think it's a little bit of fear-mongering at this current point that I think we'll be okay. We'll be okay.
I agree. So talking about how it might be more competitive for someone who's just getting started or dabbling in VO, what would you recommend just in general to anyone who's starting out in voiceover to get to where you are in your career path?
I think Sean kind of mentioned it in the beginning that there's nothing more valuable in your business than investing in the fact that you should have a well-treated space. I think too many people try to jump into like, well, I can do character voices, or I can do these impressions, and they don't worry about the quality of their studio. So first things first, really hone down on your studio quality. And then depending on your background, every single individual is different. But if you have acting training, or if you have improv training, you have some sort of vocal training, fabulous. Keep that up. and start investigating, okay, what are some free resources that are out there, like this podcast? What are some podcasts that you can listen to get that free information? What are some blogs you can read? And, the internet's pretty incredible in that regard, that we can find lots of things that we're looking for. So start to gain more knowledge. And I know it's obviously in the beginning when you don't know anybody, but the voiceover community is one of the most kind and supportive communities out there, that don't be afraid to ask. Someone can point you in the right direction. I mean, it's such a privilege to have such an artistic and creative community that is not afraid to answer those questions, or is not a gatekeeping, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so nice to have people that are willing to help. So get your studio set up, research online, find some podcasts or some blogs, and then reach out and ask them for some questions, and you'll be pointed in the right direction.
Excellent advice. I mean, I can't tell you, as someone who who started using a little foam box, and that caused no shortage of neck and back problems for me, like, your space and having a place that you can be comfortable and confident in just has such a positive impact on your performances. So always be considering it as you're growing your performance abilities. Like, where are you going to do this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Nadia. Where can folks find out more about your voice work or hire you?
Sure. So if you would like to find out more about my work, you can find my website, voicesbynadia.com, or you can find me on social media. On all platforms, I am at Voices by Nadia. And that's where you can find my email, my phone number, and we can get in contact.
Nadia, thanks so much for being here. Unfortunately, I will not see you at One Voice. I can't go this year, but hope to see you again in person pretty soon.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much.
Our pleasure. Have a great day, Nadia.
You too.
Walgreens, because it's flu season, and you live in a place with doorknobs and handrails and, people.
We tried booking a vacation rental on one of those other websites. They don't always tell you everything.
The stars take it to the red carpet.
We are back live from the red carpet.
California leads the way for change in America, and so does Kamala Harris.
Rated M for mature. Claire Redfield.
And who exactly are you?
So, yeah, what hashtag should I use to describe a grown man in a tuxedo wrestling a goat?
And prior to 1933, many of them belonged to a variety of political parties that were now outlawed in Germany.
This is the story of how Q got curly. Quinn was crazy about curls. Curly fries, curly straws, curly-haired dogs.
Hey, Jay Michael here. Thanks for listening to the VO Meter podcast. It's one of my favorites. If you're looking for a great demo like the ones you just heard, check out jmcdemos.com for more information.
All right, thanks to Nadia for coming on the show. This is one of those people who actually reached out to me and asked to be on the show. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just always surprised when it happens. So, thanks, Nadia.
Makes us feel so legit.
And it was even in person. She mentioned it at VO Atlanta, and I was like, yes, absolutely, come on the show. So, thanks so much, Nadia. It was a pleasure, and good luck with your business.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nadia. We loved having you on the podcast.
So that wraps up this episode of the VO Meter.
Measuring your voiceover progress.
Coming up, we're efforting scheduling with voice actor from Canada, Matt Calrick, who's also one of my idols from the original Voiceover Cafe podcast and Friends of Sean as well, right?
Yeah, if you look on Facebook, you can find a dueling Gandalfs singing. oh God, it was "Don't Go Breaking My Heart." Like we ran into each other at VO North
right? Yeah,
in Toronto. That's right, and so it's just like, "Don't go breaking my heart. I wouldn't if I tried," kind of thing. So it's really fun.
Yeah, that was a great video. Definitely check that out.
So stay tuned for those. You'll hear us in the next one. Thanks for listening to this episode of the VO Meter. To follow along, visit us at www.vometer.com.
We'd also love to hear your comments or suggestions for the show. Or if you have a questionable gear purchase, tell us all about it on our Facebook page or on Twitter at the VO Meter.